Now this is when the cats start jumping.
Yep, more than likely.
Cool. Well, good. After an exciting debut of Formula One's new sprint qualifying format, Max Verstappen took pole ahead of Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton. But with the temperatures causing blisters, can the British driver take advantage and convert front row into a win tomorrow, or will we see Max Verstappen take 6 victories in a row for Red Bull? Welcome to F1 Grid Talk Podcast. Today we'll be reviewing the 2021 British Grand Prix sprint qualifying. My name is Ruby Price, and joining me today we have Tom Horrox from the Monkey Seat Podcast.
Hello.
Hello, and we have F1 expert Jack Watson.
Hiya.
Firstly, if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. We'll shout out all of you who do to say thanks. So, Tom, sprint qualifying, what's your verdict?
I think initially we can be very positive. I think it was engaging, it was exciting. There was moves going on. People were giving it a go. There was variation as well. So I think it's early days, but 1 out of 1, I'd definitely give it one.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jack, what are your sentiments on it? Like, it did seem to be surprisingly entertaining, and we did see on-track battles, which I don't think many people were expecting.
Yeah, it wasn't people running at like 80% and just sticking to their racing line. That was it, to just get to the checker flag, hold your quality position. You saw, especially the midfield, them really having a go. It was also kind of good that you didn't get any like massive banging of wheels, massive contact, because then a bit like how we've had in some of our standing races last year, people going, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" Having this at every race, it was very much a middle of the road. This is what it will most likely be like every race. Quite representative. I don't think I'm as positive as Tom. I think maybe with some tweaks it could be better, but it's good that they're experimenting.
Yeah, like one of the things that people tend to, worry about when it comes to F1 introducing new things is, we only got to where we are by them changing things and taking those chances, but they're not always perfect the first time that they show up. We saw them try and introduce the timed aspect to the knockout qualifying before, and that quickly disappeared. But it does seem that the sprint qualifying format is promising at the minute. So that's a good thing. And I hope that it's worked on for the next time that we see it, which is, I don't know, Monza?
I think
I
it's
think,
Monza, yeah.
yeah.
They haven't
Monza,
confirmed definitely, but Monza's suspected, and
yeah.
Brazil is the other one, but probably won't be Brazil. It'll probably be Austin doubleheader.
Yeah. Well, thanks you guys for the confirmation. So let's look at the qualifying results then. So like I said, Max Verstappen on pole again. Tom, what's it going to take for Mercedes to keep this guy down?
Well, they need to go quicker than him, really. Yeah. I was a bit disappointed, as I'm sure a lot of British fans were, at that. I thought it was more going to be Verstappen getting away slower and Bottas giving him a hard time going into turn 1. But once again, Bottas disappoints. We saw what other people could do on the soft tyres, and he wasn't able to do that. But yeah, I mean, that's what he's great at, isn't he? He's great at those wheel to wheel moments, and then driving into the distance with he's finally got a decent car behind him that can win races, and it's going to be tough, I have to say, for the Mercedes to topple him, but he hasn't got his teammate up there with him. So we've seen in the past when it is one Red Bull against 2 Mercedes, even when Red Bull are equal, Mercedes are able to strategize their way into a win. So hopefully, Bottas and Lewis can create a race for us tomorrow, because what we don't want is just another race of Verstappen driving into the distance. He's got a 33-point lead over Hamilton now. We don't want to see that just just growing and growing. That's not good for the championship. We want a fight. We've always wanted a fight, and at the moment we're in danger of losing that. And it looked like we were going to get one this year, tentatively close to it. But so we need a couple of wins from Hamilton to bring that title fight back down to about 15 points. Then it can stay there and it can ebb and flow, and I'll be happy to see that throughout. And I don't care genuinely who wins the championship, as long as it's a close fight. But he's definitely in the ascendancy at the moment, and it is all down to Mercedes, what they can do to try and stop him rather than him trying to win the race.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jack, on to Lewis Hamilton then, was complaining about blisters towards the end, but did gain 1.5 seconds on Max Verstappen on the final lap, which was a fastest lap, but unfortunately you don't get points for that on a Saturday. But yeah, Lewis's race, do you think it was over when Max Verstappen out-dragged him at the start, or do you think, there were other factors at play here?
I think they probably backed off a lot earlier than you think. We know that Silverstone messes with the aerodynamics for the trailing car quite easily. Every corner is at least almost every corner is like fourth gear or something. So it was going to be hard to eat into that. But then, like you say, Hamilton closing in massively. He's very good at doing this. Bottom of tyres are gone, etc., etc., etc. So, yeah, I think they probably didn't want to fight too hard because we saw how close they were fighting on the first lap, and we know that they will quite happily be able to do that many laps besides that. But given what was at stake, where even like knocking a small vein off of the floor or something can't be attended to between the two sessions, they were always going to edge on the more conservative side. So you're still starting in second, you've still got clear track ahead of you, and if they can, I mean, they might try something on the strategy. They might risk it on a soft stint at the start, perhaps, and try and go longer on a medium late into the race now that this is an option. So I think, yeah, you're right in saying it was probably done early. Maybe not the drag, but early. But, I mean, they never really had the time to do what Mercedes does best and strategize around an issue.
Yeah, that is one of the things about the sprint races that is definitely throwing a strategic spanner in the works, you could say, of, there's no pit stop, so there's nothing to do strategy-wise other than choosing your starting tyres. But on this topic, Tom, we've already talked about him a little bit, but Valtteri Bottas started on the soft tyres to the surprise of everybody. Obviously, Mercedes were hoping that he would get a bit of a jump on the number one Red Bull driver, but sadly that wasn't to be. But, this is qualifying at the end of the day, which I'm still wrapping my head around. So all of these points so far been about racing, but yeah, this is still qualifying. So, P3 for Valtteri Bottas. It's not P2 ahead of a Red Bull, but it's where Mercedes need him to be at the end.
Yeah, I mean, he's on the clean side of the grid. He did the dog work today, learning what those tyres were going to be like. It was a low risk strategy to put Bottas on the softs, because then they could get some really good long run data on it in race conditions when they're not race fuel, but certainly if they want to do a 17 lap stint at the end of the race on soft tyres, then they know what the car is going to behave like. So it's definitely a good exercise from Mercedes to do that. I am slightly surprised that they didn't think to do that with Perez as well, given Perez's position, to try and move him forward a little bit. That would have been, again, a lower risk strategy for Red Bull, but Mercedes are the ones that tried it, so fair play to them for doing that. I think he's either been told that he's definitely number two for the rest of the season, or it's being very heavily implied, because you saw his body language after the qualifying session yesterday, and he was I did the job for Lewis. He didn't say he was happy about it, and he didn't look happy about it, but he was very obviously doing that job for Lewis. And again today, he's been put on the as Rod Dennis would say, the suboptimal strategy in an effort to get some data for Mercedes for the race. And in the end, it's paid off because Perez wasn't there to capitalise. And it was just a case of then, it looked like he had a run on Lewis on the first corner, and he very clearly didn't attack. I think if that's any other car on the track, he would have gone side by side. So I think it's the end of his push for the championship, and now it's all out him trying to nail a contract for next year. But he's in a position where I don't think he'll be starting the race tomorrow on the softs. I can't see that at all. You could see straight away his pace wasn't there, and he was just dropping back, conserving tyres. And I'm actually really glad that Jack disagrees with me with regard to the sprint as well, because I think that it's creating some variation in there, and I think it's been a success, certainly for this race. And it's a good indication to see what's to come. So it'd be interesting to see what happens in future races. I think people were pushing. I think people were. You saw Perez starting at the back, Sainz outside the top 10, fighting back into it. That's going to add jeopardy for tomorrow. The concern was always going to be: are people just going to return to their natural positions? You'll see George falling down the field because he always qualifies better, and now he's got an extra 100 kilometres to try and hold on. So I think it's been a very, very promising opening race, but the interesting thing will be to see what happens on different types of circuits. So Monza and then maybe a high downforce circuit would be interesting to see what happens, and I'm really glad they're trying it. And I wouldn't be against seeing this for 6 races, because why not? Because we have the same thing every week, so why not?
Why not? And also variation of opinions amongst broadcasters. Who'd have thought that? Yeah, so Jack, let's look at Charles Leclerc in P4. He'll be very happy with that. He's ahead of the McLarens, and also it's P4, which means he's also ahead of a Red Bull.
Yeah, absolutely. It was quite punchy at the start with how we saw that sort of midfield bunching up, but I think he probably got a bit of a break when Perez had his mishap. Yeah, I'm just double checking. He did start fourth, so being able to hang on, I suppose looking back, another benefit was Norris getting stuck behind Alonso, because he had some pace and he was reeling him in come getting that clear track. But probably could have gone, had that not happened, he probably would have had more to work for. But yeah, doing exactly what Ferrari needed him to do, hanging on to that strong pace. It's what they need to do to get ahead of McLaren long term. And if we do find the following issue is as bad as it is tomorrow, they're in a strong position.
Yeah, and Tom, looking at McLaren's star for the future, Lando Norris, some fantastic overtakes, particularly on Fernando Alonso at turn 3. Yeah, a good show today, but promising for tomorrow in the sense that he's back right behind that Ferrari.
Yeah, I think there was a golden opportunity there for Lando to be starting the race 4th, but thanks to Weavy McWeave-face there, he wasn't able to get ahead early enough and push on Leclerc. I think he would have had the pace to get on the back of Charlie, but again, at that point in the race, you saw he finished 13 seconds behind Leclerc in the end, and that was, he was then, as soon as he got past Alonso, as soon as he broke the DRS, so that to give Daniel a chance to try and get past as well, it was just a case of managing the car to the end, look after the engine, look after the tyres, just make sure the car gets home with no damage. That is what I will say with this sprint format, is when you've got people fighting for stuff, you'll see good action, but then when you've got people who have already maximised their position, they're just going to sit there because, with 10 laps to go, they're not, the likelihood of a safety car is minimum. They're just going to get themselves into a safe position and then cruise home, because the risk versus reward is going to be far too high. So he's kind of maximised his position there from what he could do. It would have been, he's been mugged by Alonso on the outside of Copse. And I was saying all race, that you don't overtake going into Copse, and I hadn't seen that, and it's only after the race when I saw the overtake of Fernando Alonso going around the outside of Copse, I was like, yeah, okay, you can overtake going into Copse. So it was, to be honest, it was a phenomenal first lap from Fernando, and we got last lap Lando, but first lap Fernando, he had a phenomenal time there, and he really gave the McLarens a headache. So he will look to 4th place is a possibility there. I don't think we're going to see Perez coming through enough from where he's starting. So I think 4th place is going to be the target for McLaren. So 4th and 5th will be what they're looking for. So yeah, he's done good. They've looked after the car, and hopefully they can carry through to the race as well, because they clearly do have the speed.
Yeah, they clearly do. And Lando was P3 in my predictions for the preview episode of this podcast, also available on all the platforms that you listen to this on. But yeah, Jack, Lando Norris's McLaren teammate Daniel Ricciardo in P6, this is what McLaren have wanted from Daniel Ricciardo to come all season. He's finally performing where his teammates performing. Do you think it's just a one-off? Do you think he's going to do well tomorrow? Or do you think, this is something that's a bit more long-term and, Daniel Ricciardo's back?
I think it's a bit early to say if he's back, though, of course, there's a lot of people out there that would like that to be the case, myself included. For them to qualify near enough exactly the same time in the spring what is it called? Spring qualifying, yeah. Whatever yesterday's session was. That was mighty impressive. There was they wouldn't have been like leaving anything on the table. There was no advantage to that at all. So it is very much an improved showing from him, but lo and behold, Danny Rick does better in a race than he does on a one-lap shootout. It's kind of been a bit of a trend we've seen with him since being in this McLaren. I think if they can kind of gang up on Leclerc, given Sainz's issues in this race, that might be his best bet to sort of get past them on track as quickly as possible. Because I think if the battle goes on, he may start struggling. But we'll have to wait and see. Fingers crossed that we start seeing this momentum carried through into the following races.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed for Daniel Ricciardo. And Tom, let's talk about Weavy McWeavy Face, who was, for the sake of it, let's call it, oscillating across the track rather than weaving. I think I've seen less oscillations on like heart monitors sometimes. But yeah, a very good lap from Fernando Alonso, like you said, on the opening lap. But after that, it was just, let's see how long we can keep this going. But it's the race when we see the real Fernando Alonso, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's been watching me on the dance floor. That's my favourite dance move, the lawnmower he was doing down the straights there. So no, he's definitely still got the one lap pace in race format. We saw it in Baku. And I think that was an audition for this race, to be honest. He showed what he could do in one lap, and saying to the guys, "Come on, look, one lap and then defend. Just give me the soft tyres. I'll show you what I can do." And I think you will see more people doing that throughout the field. He's shown that it can happen. He definitely benefited from doing that. Yes, he got up to fifth. He did lose positions, but I was expecting to see the tyre drop off so big. I expected Vettel past him, I expected Russell past him, and I expected Ocon to be told to stay behind him, so to protect him from the guys behind. So it's he's shown what this format can do and what people can do if they take a risk. So you will always see the top guys going for the most conservative strategy, and then you will see the guys from behind going for it. I think you will see it because the risk versus reward that they keep going on about there. Now Fernando Alonso is starting in a premium position, the position that George Russell wanted. That's where he's starting now. That is the best position that he could possibly start. If he can get to a good start, do a long first stint and hold the people behind him, luck out with a safety car maybe, you could see him on the soft tyres at the end pushing for a podium potentially in the right circumstances. Things have got to work for that to happen, but he's definitely put his car in a position where a bold strategy could pay huge dividends, as opposed to where Alpine are looking like they're going to be, kind of tail end point scorers, picking up 2, 3, 4 points here and there. He's got himself into a position where he could potentially get a big haul of points, and that's because they took a risk in the sprint. And I think you'll see more people doing that in future, which is why I think Jack's wrong. But yeah, your rebuttal.
Allow me to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jack, Sebastian Vettel right behind Fernando Alonso in qualifying. If it wasn't defensive maneuvers that were getting him warnings, you would expected Vettel to maybe come past him, given the pace that Aston Martin did show, at points this weekend. But, as it being a race rather than one lap pace, Sebastian Vettel is starting behind him tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, really, because it looks like Vettel did well. He's up 2 places from where he started, but both those places came from other drivers' misfortunes. Sainz at Luffield and Perez coming out of onto Chapel, I think it is. I think he was hoping to have capitalised on that on the deck that Tom mentioned, and it did look like Alonso was going to suffer. It's one of those where this was my issue with the current layout of sprint, in that the length didn't really like. What did they want it to accomplish? Did they want it to go a touch longer and open up more of a tyre saving issue? In which case, we probably would have seen Vettel capitalise on that, or do they want a guaranteed flat out push? Well, I'm sure we'll get to this later though. In terms of Vettel himself, I mean, it was kind of, I would say it was pretty quiet. I thought he'd get close to Alonso as this race went on, but unfortunately just couldn't get past it. It seems like the Aston's not great at managing its dirty air. So yeah, probably better than he would have thought, to be honest, given how he lucked into those position gains. And after the race, didn't seem too happy on the layer itself. It was just a bit meh. But it's more racing for the fans, so very, very deflective. But he'll be focused on tomorrow. We know what Vettel's like.
Yeah, we know what Vettel's like. And Tom, a driver we were expecting to suffer with the introduction of the sprint qualifying, George Russell qualifying P9 for tomorrow after starting P8. Obviously, two of those positions have been inherited from other drivers' misfortunes, one of which he is, seeing the stewards about himself with the Carlos Sainz nudge. The other one being Sergio Perez's spin. But yeah, George Russell starting P9 after going flat out for 17 laps. Didn't expect to say that.
Yeah, it's he's done okay. I mean, he did drop, as you say. He's inherited two positions and lost a place as well. He was a little bit sleepy when Fernando Alonso went past him, and it's a bit bittersweet. I think with a couple of faster cars dropping out, he would have expected to be at least starting where he qualified. So he'll be disappointed in that front, but also he is still starting into the top 10. So as a result of that, they can attempt to at least attempt to try and stay there. It just seems that every time I'm on a podcast at the moment with you guys, I'm always awaiting a penalty for either Norris or Russell or Hamilton, because I'm always like frantically checking Twitter and Sky Sports and F1 trying to see if there's any news, but no news currently. I'm sure as soon as we click stop on the recorder, that news will come through as usual. But yeah, no, there's a chance there. I think there's just this ultimate irony in the fact that he's finishing in the top 10 and yep, there's no points awarded. So yeah, just make sure that George Howson doesn't put a bet on him getting a point this weekend, because he's cursed him for the last year and we need him to stop it. So hopefully it will be amazing for him to do it in front of British fans. I don't think it will happen, I have to say. I think this is less likely than the previous races, but I am now turned around on the fact that Williams can't score points. I think they will score points this year now. And I just hope it is Russell that does it, because let's be honest, it's not going to be Latifi unless he lucks into it. We have another like Hockenheim situation where, Kubica steals a point and it's the one race where Russell finishes behind him. So I think Williams will score points this year. The car is getting better. They're looking quicker in qualifying. They're looking quicker in race trim. They seem to be well clear of, or certainly in Russell's hands, well clear of of my favourite team, the Alfa Romeos, and that the Hatters aren't even in the conversation anymore. So that's just an embarrassment, to be fair. But yeah, they're definitely in the fight there with the AlphaTauris and the Aston Martins. So if they're in the fight with them, then they're in the fight for points. I think it's coming this weekend. Not likely, but it is coming. So come on, it's coming home. Come on, George.
Well, he did just survive, 100 kilometers of racing speed. So, maybe tomorrow, to quote that Welsh band. But Jack, last of the top 10, Esteban Ocon, dragging his Alpine up to P10. That's where Alpine are wanting him to be, given he's been eliminated in Q1 for the last two race weekends. I can't remember where he started today actually, but that's just Esteban Ocon for the last couple of weeks really. But yeah, Jack, Esteban Ocon P10.
Yeah, it's good enough showing, I suppose. Again, another one to benefit from the two droppers. He started 13th, so he did make a position on track. It's just a bit. Well, it's like you say. He's just been a bit sort of lackluster since getting this contract signed in, and I don't know why. I really can't pick my finger on it. I don't think neither can he. the fact that he has at least managed to make up something on track, though, it should be at least a small crumb of comfort if they've got 3 times the distance to work on it tomorrow. So hopefully, because they're not going to see Alonso doing what he did again, like that soft tire. I will say, 6th place is, come on, he had a tyre advantage. You bear that in mind. So that sort of won't be putting such a glaring difference between the pair of them. So if they can just work on playing that long game, and he can just sort of start regrouping somewhere, because this has got to come. He can't just coast now that he's got 3 years already lined up. I'm pretty sure we know if Renault's past experience is anything to go by, contracts don't mean anything. So yeah, it's got to be careful.
Definitely got to be careful. So a driver who definitely didn't have the best of sprint races today, but did manage to make quite a recovery. Carlos Sainz, Tom, P11. It's not where he wants to start in a Ferrari, but given that he did end up quite far back, that's better than nothing.
Yeah, I mean, if George Russell is Mr. Saturday, Carlos Sainz is definitely Sunday Sainz, because he always seems to come forward in races. And Ferrari, my opinion, they're going to favour Leclerc most of the time. But despite that, Carlos Sainz is only 2 points behind Leclerc in the championship. I know he's got the DNF in Monaco, which was it's going to be a big contributing factor to that. But Sainz, when he gets bad luck on Saturdays, they put him on these alternate strategies, and he just makes them work. He is one of the most hard-working drivers in the field, and if Ferrari are going to win races, I want it to be Carlos Sainz, because I think he's an absolute demon. I think he's brilliant, and I really want him to do well, which is hard for me to say, because I lived through the Ferrari Schumacher years, and I don't want to go back there, not just yet anyway. But Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari is a red car I'm happy to see win. So I think he's not out of it. I know ordinarily starting 11th, you'd say, yay, free tyre choice, but that's not the case tomorrow. Everyone gets free tyre choice, so that's taken that gamble away. But I think they will try something different. They'll either start him on the softs, try and do an Alonso in the first few laps, and then hope for a safety car, or they will go long and hope for not a safety car. And I think they'll move forward, and I can see Sainz closing in on Leclerc in the race anyway. Whether he ends up anywhere near him, I'm not sure, but he wants to lead that team. He wants to prove that Ferrari signed him as a number 2. They definitely signed him as a number 2, and he's already proven that he's every bit as good as Leclerc, or can be as good as Leclerc. Certainly in race trim, probably missing something in qualifying slightly to Leclerc, because he is absolutely phenomenal over one lap. But I think in the races he's got the edge. So let's wait and see. I think he'll definitely move forwards, and there'll be some interesting strategic elements. And I have to say, we wouldn't have this strategic element had we had normal qualifying. So another plus in the box for sprint qualifying.
The longest debate across multiple questions for whether is the sprint qualifying good, coming up between Tom and Jack. But Jack, let's look at Pierre Gasly. He had a pretty disappointing day on Friday, and he's starting where he finished. Well, he's starting tomorrow where he started today. So, P12 in the AlphaTauri, he'll be disappointed with that. But, do you think that that's the best the AlphaTauri could have got today, or do you think that maybe they should have been much higher up? Unmuted, please.
Sorry, I did. Yeah. I'm not too sure. I think normally he's kind of able to extract absolutely everything that car is capable of. So maybe you are right in saying that it just didn't work for them at Silverstone. It's not a track that caters to that car's capabilities. Of course, you'll be disappointed. I think it is that this is just a bit of a legacy of struggling in the one lap pace yesterday. After all the melees that went on around them, I can't help but think maybe they were one that decided to do what all the naysayers have been saying, just back off, stick to your position, and we'll just work on it tomorrow. At least we can take the risks then. There's no point in tearing the car apart for us to just start last and get nowhere. So, yeah, like I say, disappointing. It's just going to have to throw everything they've got at tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom, a driver who, isn't quite known for its qualifying performances anymore. But obviously, the sprint qualifying format seems to be lending itself to him a bit more, given he's finally made it out of what would be a Q1 position. Kimi Räikkönen starting in P13. Is this good for Kimi? Is this just more of Kimi?
Oh, good. I get both Alfa Romeos again. I've just noticed. Oh, well, never mind. Yeah. I have to say, in qualifying yesterday, the Alfa Romeos did look like they had something. I did comment at the time that it looked like they were actually moving forwards and had some pace. So that was good to see that they might actually be relevant in some way. Raikkonen ahead of Giovinazzi. It's okay. It's fine. Again, it's 13th place. They've got Lance Stroll behind them. They've got Sergio Perez behind them. I think it's going to be a tough ask to move forward from them. It's just going to be defending, hoping for retirements and safety cars. I don't see them having a particularly engaging race from there, but maybe that's just my personal bias coming through. Who knows? And yes, I actually just complimented Lance Stroll in a roundabout way as well. So his racing is definitely his stronger trait at the moment, as you would hope so with the amount of experience he's got. However, those individual errors are starting to creep in more and more often, and he just needs to keep it clean. And he might get a point. Maybe if something goes right for him, then great. But I can't see them. Having I think Raikkonen's best day in recent history was it? What race was it? Was it Portimao or Turkey last year when he ended up passing about 8 cars or something on the first? More than that, he ended up climbing up to about 4th place or something on the first lap. I think that's probably going to be the lasting memory of Kimi's legacy, because since then it's almost like he hasn't been there. So who knows? But 13th, great, grand. He's good. He's beat his teammate. It's another one ticked off, but it's just another race closer to retirement for me.
Yeah, and he did become the first driver in F1 history to race at the same circuit 20 times today, which just tells you how long he's been around for, and all of that experience. But yeah, Lance Stroll, Jack, in P14, it's not where his teammate is, but, they did start in pretty similar positions to each other from distance at the start of the sprint qualifying. So, he'll be disappointed.
Yeah, of course he will. Aston Martin are always going to be wanting more. It's climbed up 1. Yay. I don't know. I think he's probably got more to give in the race. I think maybe, although saying that out loud didn't really feel right. So we'll wait and see. But Aston they've had a reasonable run of form, especially seeing what Vettel's been able to pull out of that car in his qualifying rounds. They'll definitely have a bit of a spotlight on him. Well, maybe they won't actually. Whatever. He's just going to have to pull his finger out in the race, really. There's not much more we can really say. It was a fairly quiet run for him in sprint. I don't know if he was also told to keep it quiet. I certainly know my next driver definitely would have been told that. You're just going to have to focus on pushing forwards again. There's not much to say for such an anonymous drive.
Yeah, pretty anonymous from Lance Stroll. And Tom, on to the next Alfa Romeo car. He'll have definitely been happy by the announcement that Alfa Romeo will be sticking, in the sport next season, given their stipulation for an Italian driver. But, in starting in P15, you've got to wonder if that is the right decision. He's gone.
I think he's gone.
Yeah. Well, Jack, same question to you whilst we wait for Tom.
To be honest, I'm not too sure Giovinazzi can be that confident, because I'm pretty sure I read that whilst he is Ferrari Junior, the fact that Alfa Romeo is sticking around doesn't mean they're pulling in other Ferrari Juniors. Do Sauber still have their own junior program in F2 and F3? I'm not too sure.
I'm not sure either.
I certainly know they did 2019. So if they're going back to Sauber running it, I don't think Gio's got too much that he can. I don't think he can be too confident in sticking around. I think the one thing in his favour is that I kind of agree with Tom. I think Raikkonen is on the verge of retirement. So they'll probably want to keep Giro around to just be a safe pair of hands when they promote someone else up. I don't think they'll pull a Haas and just completely change everything. So otherwise, if another fairly quiet driver, he does need to sort of get cracking and do a bit more with his teammate, as he's being shown up a bit there.
Yeah, just a little bit. Tom, are you back with us now?
Please don't tell me I missed the Antonio Giovinazzi question.
You missed the Antonio
Oh
Giovinazzi question.
Oh no! Well, the reason my internet crashed was because I was searching for interesting facts about Antonio Giovinazzi. It couldn't find any and died. So yeah, sorry. So what's my question? I beg your pardon.
Oh, your question is now about Yuki Tsunoda. Who's going to be starting 16th tomorrow, but what he needed was a quiet and consistent weekend, but maybe finishing towards the points and starting in P16. Do you have the confidence in Yuki to do that tomorrow?
Not at the moment, no. I think AlphaTauri are fast becoming my new Alfa Romeo. They've got a car that's clearly capable of challenging the cars in front, and they're just not doing it. Gasly is dragging some results out of it, but gradually, as we've seen, starting to drop back. He's qualifying up there, and then he's just dropping back in the race. He's doing a very George Russell job, but Yuki Tsunoda is not doing that. Now, we can say that he's a rookie, give him time. Absolutely, you need to give him time. But he's not extracting the best out of the car. You see his qualifying laps and they're really scrappy. He's making errors in races, and you need to give him time. You need to allow him to get used to the formula. That's fine. But he is making fundamental errors and is just not doing a good enough job at the moment. Now, I'm not saying get rid of him. Absolutely not. He needs to see out the season. He needs to show improvement by the end of the season. And provided he can show that he's on that trajectory, he needs to just calm down and show that he's on that trajectory and that he's able to, on occasion, bring home the bacon. If he can do that, he'll get another season. But you've got Yuri Vips sitting there waiting. You've got Alex Albon with Thai backing and Thailand owning half of the Red Bull team. They'll want him back in Formula One as well. So he's got competition for that seat, and you've got Liam Lawson coming through as well. There's some really great Red Bull back drivers waiting in the wings, and with Honda going away, are they going to be particularly desperate to keep him in the car? I'm not sure they are. So he needs to do the business, and I can definitely see him under pressure. So 16th for me in that car behind two Alfa Romeos is just not good enough. He needs to improve, but give him time, but he needs to improve.
Yeah, under pressure in one of the most harsh driver academies in Formula One. Who'd have thought of that? Yuki Tsunoda had better have done though. But Nicola Satifijak in P17 for Williams, ahead of the Haas, which is the least you can expect from any team on this grid. But he's up in P17 because Sergio Perez DNF'd. That's
It's a very Latifi drive, isn't it? Like we've seen a bit more out of him recently, but it's one of those where it's just more often than not. I think he could maybe reach it, like do a bit more of a stroll up performance in time, where he can just sort of plug away and consistently do something at least reasonable. But I mean, it's just sort of on a bit of a coast. It seemed at that point, maybe Williams didn't want him to take any risks, or although sometimes he does wind up with Tsunoda. So maybe it's one of those where like it just isn't good enough. It isn't good enough, considering that we do know what he can do. We have had some better performances. So, but I mean, maybe the Williams is just struggling for race pace. We know we do expect it to drop back. Obviously, he's not as good a qualifier as his teammate, but maybe he's just also suffering the same way that his teammate is, but because of the pace of the cars at this end of the grid, it just doesn't show. But
yeah, absolutely. And Tom, over a minute off the grid, off the pace of the race, the two Haas cars, Mick Schumacher in P18, did someone tell them to do twice the length of the race, or were they told it was a sprint as well?
It's just an embarrassment, isn't it? To be honest, it's the word sprint doesn't apply to Haas. It's more of a leisurely jog for the Haas cars. But he was half a second a lap quicker than his teammate on average. Which I mean, to be fair, his teammate was backwards on the first lap after hitting him as well. So. Hey, that's on brand at least. Anyway, yeah. I mean, they've moved forward one position each, both of them. Well done, and that's because Perez decided he wasn't going to realise that it was a sprint race. So yeah, it's going to be a long day again. It's a question of how many laps and can he beat his teammate. So harsh reality for Mick Schumacher. He's going to need crazy circumstances and rain, safety car, lightning, nuclear fire bees, something to bring him up the grid, but it's not going to happen, is it? He says he wants to get into Q2 like on pace this season. Ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen. There's nothing coming to that Haas car. It is what it is. As long as they're within the 107%, they'll be happy. But yeah, just roll on the end of the season for those guys. We know that they're both not going anywhere. I mean, Mick potentially could end up going to another team, but that's only if Ferrari deem it necessary. So I think he'll be in Haas next year and probably doing a slightly better job than he is now and a much better job than his teammate. But yeah, it's just a non-story now, unfortunately, for them till the end of the season, which is a shame for the guy because he fully deserves his chance in F1. He just needs better machinery.
Yeah, and the driver who doesn't really deserve his chance in F1, Jack, Nikita Mazepin, back on form, spinning around. It's just like what we like to see. I was annoyed because I did at least say, at least he's not spinning anymore in the preview to this weekend's Formula One action. But yeah, P19 behind his teammate, hitting his teammate, which is one of the biggest no-nos in F1. But Haas have got the money coming from his dad, at least, to afford any mishaps that may happen on track.
Yeah, to echo Tom there, it's another non-story, really, isn't it? At least he decided to try and make things a bit entertaining by crashing into Schumacher, and decided at the last minute, maybe I should spin out of this. This isn't going to go well. Yeah, I mean, we didn't see him after that, so yeah, it's just sort of doing. Admittedly, the car's not going to work with him. What do we expect? And yeah, just come on, what are you doing crashing into your teammate turn one of a 17-lap race on a car that's got a team that's got no money to make the repairs? Yeah, what else can you say?
Yeah, I think the less about this driver, the better. But Tom, on to your driver of the season last season, Sergio Perez, a DNF. It did look as though he avoided the barriers after his spin, going on to, I think, as Jack said, Chapel. But they did decide to DNF anyway and retire the car. Do you think that's more so they can fit in some new components without a penalty?
Was that actually true? Was he my driver of the season last year? Did I say?
Okay. I remember you saying, why is everyone giving him the
driver of the season? Right. Okay. I was going to say, that doesn't sound like me. Yes, no, that's 100% exactly what they've done. Yeah, he was 18th, and by boxing him on the last lap, I mean, you can't tell me the car couldn't have made it an extra couple of 100 yards because they boxed him on the last lap. It means that they're no longer in Parc Fermé and they can make changes to the car, so they can change things on the race setup to try and optimize things. So 100% that's why they've done it. There was nothing wrong with the car. There was no damage to it. He didn't get the memo, did he? I mean, what was he doing? He was in a position. Yes, he was. Realistically, his best finish would have been where Norris finished. But he was sitting pretty behind the McLarens and the Alpine. That was the cork in the bottle. If he'd have just played it carefully, he could have easily. He was going to get past Alonso. He clearly had the pace on Norris as well. And I bet Danny was rubbing his hands together when he went off. But it just doesn't make sense. What was he playing at? I know there's disturbed air and the wake and everything, but everyone else was following really close for big sections of the race, and they didn't have a problem with it. He's an experienced guy. You'd expect that from Yuki Tsunoda or Nikita Mazepin or someone like that, but you wouldn't expect it from someone of his experience, especially when he's where he is. He needs to be with the Mercedes. That's his job, and he's not. He is now given Mercedes the pincer movement strategy available to them that they haven't had all season because he's been there. And as a result, I still think Max is the favourite for the race tomorrow. but he's definitely given Mercedes a way in. And that's what he shouldn't be doing, because now with those three in the top three, they're going to have options to box and go for a two-stopper. They're going to have options to go for the fastest lap. They're going to have all kinds of options available to him that they wouldn't have had if he was there, because unless McLaren are going to have, and Ferrari are going to have that pace, which I don't think they're going to have the race pace to stay with them. McLaren maybe, but I can't see Ferrari having the race pace to stay with them, and the Ferrari is going to be the cork in the bottle tomorrow as well. So it's bad. It's bad for him. It's a really, really bad thing for him to do in that. I mean, he's starting very, very last. And his best case scenario, really, barring safety cars and stuff, is to get like in, top 5, top 6, behind the McLarens, behind the Ferraris. So, yeah, he's given himself a lot of work to do, and he's got to make amends tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And having discussed all of the positions so far, let's have a look at some predictions for tomorrow. Mine obviously being revealed on the preview episode of Hamilton, Verstappen, Norris. Let's get your top steps. Jack, who's going to be on top tomorrow?
I think Verstappen might do it, actually. I was talking to a friend before, saying I think that I don't expect anything different. We know what Hamilton's like at this track. We know what Mercedes is like. But to be fair, it is funny how there's been a bit of a switch of fortune with Mercedes saying, come on, who was it? Christian saying, look at that Mercedes go in a straight line. Oh, sorry, no, but we was always saying, look at the Red Bull go in a straight line, and now we've got it going the other way around. I think Verstappen might actually have the measure of Hamilton for this one. He didn't seem too happy with his performance today. So, I would go Verstappen for the win. And I think Hamilton will chase into it. And I think Norris might actually come third.
You've been looking at my notes. Tom, your predictions, please, for tomorrow.
Well, I couldn't possibly agree with Jack. Surely that's just not on brand at all. So no, I'm going to go for Hamilton win. I think I think the strategy options there, and it's going to be because of Perez. I think Verstappen will get away. He'll hold the lead. Hamilton will do what Hamilton does. He'll sit there until the end of the first stint, push up towards him, and then they'll either bring Bottas in to try and undercut Verstappen, and then Red Bull will react, and then Hamilton will then go long and then do a later second stint. But either way, they've got the options there. So you just see, I know they backed right off at the end of that sprint race, and you saw how, even with them backing right off, how far they were ahead of Leclerc. That Ferrari's not going to have the race pace. So I agree. I think there's an outside chance there, Lando getting on the podium, or potentially even Danny. I didn't get to talk about Danny obviously earlier, but I think he's not back because he never went away, but he's definitely at a point now where he's starting to get to grips with that car. He's a lot closer to Norris. This is a track that he knows well. He made his debut in Formula One here, so he loves the track. He knows it very well. I think he's got an outside chance of a podium as well. So I'm going to go with Ham Verbot for the podium for my predictions. But I wouldn't be surprised to see an orange car in third place as well.
An orange car in third place as well. But let's make some bold predictions now. And if George Howson were here, he would very obviously be saying George Russell for points. But Jack, your bold prediction, please.
I'm going to go back on something I said before. I said Alonso wouldn't pull his first lap stunt again. I agree he won't do that, but I think he might hit fourth. He might drag that Alpine kicking and screaming into the top 5.
That would be quite impressive given race circumstances versus sprint qualifying circumstance. But Tom, your bold prediction, please.
Okay, well, I'm going to go different from what I said with the McLarens. That's probable that you might see an orange car on the podium, but what's possible is seeing a red car on the podium, and it's not going to be Leclerc. That's my bold prediction.
We swear he doesn't have this allegiance because of Carlos Sainz's former McLaren stint.
No, not at all. Genuinely, I liked him when he was at Red Bull, when he was at Toro Rosso.
Yeah, that was a good, promising time for Carlos Sainz. But I think for me, I am gonna have as a bold prediction. I don't quite know, really. Sergio Perez in P4. It's not necessarily what I think will happen, but it would be pretty bold, starting in P20. And, if someone can make tyres last and, show up right at the end, it would be Checo Perez, I think, at least. So that's a show. Let's give these people an opportunity to promo. So, Tom, you've already got it there. The Monkey Seat podcasts. Let's get a pitch.
Okay, so the Monkey Seat, we're a weekly podcast, although we didn't podcast last week because my co-host is very, very busy, and we cover all motorsport, mostly Formula One, and then we got a guy who comes on who's an expert on IndyCar, and then we've got a guy who comes on who's an expert on Formula E, and then we touch on the Formula 2, Formula 3 W Series as well, and we get Ian Davis from Veloce in Extreme E. He comes on after every race as well to talk us through what happened in Extreme E. So got lots of good guests, lots of episodes up now. Not as much as you guys because we only podcast once a week, whereas you do 3 times a race weekend. So we're up to episode 58, and you can catch us at Monkey Seat Pod on the socials, and monkeyseatpod.com is the website, and we're available on all major podcasting platforms. But yeah, come and give us a listen.
Come and give them a listen, yeah. And Jack, if anyone wants to find you as an F1 expert online.
I mean, I say expert is debatable, but yeah, I mean, you can find me on a couple of these podcasts. I've done a couple of the off-season historical pieces, so looking at Tiregate at Indy and things such as that. Otherwise, I also do technical and historical articles on Sportlight. So if you want a more in-depth look at some of currently I've got a series going on some of the most influential designs in F1. Be sure to check that out. Currently aero, so expect to see the Lotus 78 ground effect car, the Turbo 119 with the higher nose. Come have a read.
Yeah, go and have a read. And if you want to hear more from me, you can find me on the socials at Rubes, Ruubez. Yeah. So Grid Talk is available on Amazon as well as YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, Omni Studio, and Pocket Casts. Just search for the F1 Grid Talk. We have a huge back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and the race results. We are on Reddit. Search for the subreddit F1 Grid Talk. And we also have a Patreon for mics, lights, and better recording equipment. Also, make sure you subscribe so you're the first to know when each new weekly episode is released. We'll be back tomorrow to review the British Grand Prix. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for joining me, Jack and Tom.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and if you're listening on YouTube, keep listening because we will be discussing potentially any results from George Russell's stewards inquiry. Tom, anything on that yet?
I've been checking. There's nothing come up yet.
Yeah, nothing yet, but also we'll be answering questions and talking about other discussion points. But as I say, thank you very much and goodbye. Yeah, so as Tom has seen in the YouTube comments, we do have a question from Drew Davis. Just wondering if you think a shorter sprint race might have allowed things to shake up more. It seemed that over this distance, things sorted themselves out into the usual starting positions. So Tom has already accused Drew of being Jack's burner account, but Jack, what do you make of this?
Yes, you are 100% right, Drew. Congratulations.
I saw you typing it. I know it was you.
Yeah, okay, look. What did they want from this? Because it got to the point where it was either too short, you either have the softs completely drop off. We saw them blistering, so you either let them actually run the course but lock them out the pits. I'm pretty sure Pirelli are comfortably within their tyres' capabilities, and let that sort of strategy play out over a shortened race distance. Or you go more aggressive and shorten it down to maybe 80 Ks or something like that. Because it was just that first pit stop stint. Like, if you had that before the first pit stops, that was just a race. I agree it's nice having the extra racing on a Saturday, and I really liked having quali on the Friday. But what would you do with the extra time on Saturday? I think what you might be the bigger thing of looking into here is the early parc fermé. If you're really wanting to shake things up, the fact that they're locking them out of their cars after just 1 hour of practice is probably the bigger thing. Like, you can let them race all you want, but more often than not, these teams are very, very analytical. They're more likely to go on the air of the side of the caution. So I think if you really want to do something in this line, you're more focusing on shortening practice and bringing in a more aggressive parc fermé regulations. What is the correct thing to do for the Saturday and Sunday? I can't tell you right now, but look, at least that they're trying stuff, and I'm happy that they're trying stuff. And this isn't like we had elimination qualifying or aggregate qualifying where it should have been gone immediately. I'm more than happy to see this play out. I second quite a few people saying that Silverstone wasn't the best place to do it because it's so hard to follow with these cars. It works well for a longer race. It works well to let a strategy play out because otherwise you just get stuck in a train. So you need to do something in the pits to shake it up. If Monza is believed to be the next one, that will be interesting because we know very well you can race hard there. So assuming that's the case, I'm very interested to see that. But me personally, for Silverstone, probably should have been shorter.
Yeah, that's a reasonable aspect. I think for me, actually, the qualifying being on a Friday kind of threw me off a bit because I've been thinking it's Sunday all day today, but also just, having an extra day of, Formula One. Well, I say an extra day of, the competitive part of Formula One, if you get what I mean.
There's been a
Tom?
fair few. Oh, sorry, just to chip in
Yeah,
before
fine.
that. I'll let Tom speak in a second. But I have just seen a few people saying, "What if they did sprint, but as a separate championship, a sprint championship, and then you've got your normal Grand Prix championship?" Just another thought. Sorry, Tom.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You can continue being wrong as long as you want. That's fine. No, I love it. No, everyone's entitled to their opinion, and I know this is one of the most divisive things in Formula One at the moment, whether this is a good idea or not. I, for one, was dead against reverse grids. I was glad to see the back of it, and this was an option. And I was divided as to whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, but it was an idea, and with the format they came up with, which initially I was a little bit suspect about, I was, well, why don't they just do qualifying on Saturday morning and then the race, and then the sprint race Saturday afternoon? I absolutely have been turned around on that now. The qualifying after one practice session really energised things, and what we've seen in the past, they've been saying, oh, bin off practice because the racing's much better when they don't have time to set the cars up. That's not going to work because that doesn't follow Formula One's model of trying to create this festival of motorsport. Doing it over 2 days is not in their model at all. But what I think you'll see now is this format or a very similar iteration of this format will come into 5-6 Grand Prix next year. You may see the return of some triple headers, but with 2-day weekends. Have that on 2 or 3 race weekends of the year. You might see a completely different qualifying format altogether just to shake things up. Even if it's just like a 30-minute power half hour or whatever they want to call it, to just go back to the old system. And I, for one, with the elimination qualifying, I know it was universally ridiculed, but I think the teams wanted it to fail. It was absolutely half-baked when they brought it in. I thought it was a good idea at first, but it just wasn't given the time to actually see how it go. Now, if you were to take that elimination qualifying session and stick it in an hour, and you say you give everyone 20 minutes to put in a fast time, and then you start doing it. The problem they had was they had the elimination sessions in 3 sessions like they do now, and that was never going to work. So I can foresee a situation where they go back to elimination qualifying, but over an hour's session, and do it that way. And then that way you've got people forcing them, they have to go out in the first 20 minutes and put these times in and get the best time they can, and then they can sit in and take a risk or go out and do a faster time as the track evolves. I think it's something that you could see in future, so I'm all for it. With 23, 24, 25 races a season, you're going to have variation because the racing's going to get so boring. Oh, we're doing this again, and it's going to take something like this. What they've done today has completely energised my British Grand Prix weekend, and I'm absolutely buzzing. I'm not saying that it was an amazing race, but you've got a situation where they've still got the standard qualifying session on the Friday, and it's better because they haven't got time to practice. So by doing a sprint race, okay, it might not be the most exciting thing in the world, but it's not going to make things worse. It's only going to make things better, and it's giving the fans in the grandstand more bang for their buck, and it's giving the broadcasters more live competitive events, and let's be honest, it's giving Formula One a better opportunity to advertise things. Crypto are getting lots out of this, and they're getting all kinds of extra advertising revenue out of it. And let's be honest, Formula One is a business, and if they can bring more money in, then that means that the sport is more popular. So long as it doesn't, they don't start putting adverts in races and things, then I'm fine with that commercialism side of things. Just if it's going to make more money, then the sport works as a whole. So I am fully behind it. 100%. I'm now sold on it.
Yeah, we can tell.
I've had a lot of coffee as well, so
yeah,
we can also tell. Okay, look,
Yeah.
I think I'd need more than just one race to base an opinion off of. Surely you've got to take more data points. Like, one race does not a season make.
Which one's the engineer and which one's the creative?
So what you're saying, Jack, is a marathon, not a sprint, yeah?
Oh, come on. Okay, no, one thing I did want to touch on, that you said there, like, bringing in variation. And I get that. Like, I do see what you mean with the elimination qualifying. It wasn't helped by F1 was very much still. I know I'm pretty sure we had Liberty back then, but F1 was still in that very reactionary state.
Yeah, no, it's 2016, it was still Bernie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. So yeah, very much so. F1 was still they would make that knee-jerk reaction based on immediate public opinion, which was never going to work. But you were talking about variation. What if we got to the point of customizing events to the racetracks? So, say Monaco, you do your one-shot quali, at races where we find that sprint qualifying does work, you introduce that, stuff like that. If you've taken that line of F1 is this sort of celebration of just how fast these ground-based missiles can go, would you maximize it to the circuits across the season?
No, I agree. I don't want this every race. God, a sprint race in Monaco, that would be hell.
That would be horrendous.
That'd be horrible. No, I am absolutely behind that. I want variation in per race as well, and tailor it to the tracks. Absolutely. The return of one-shot qualifying as well. I like that idea. That's one I didn't mention earlier, but yeah, no, I'm absolutely 100% behind that. And so long as there is variation there, I absolutely do not want sprint qualifying every race. That just sounds like hell. So no, absolutely, I want 3 or 4 different formats of qualifying, and you could even put some race variation in there to a degree, but not so much in that front, because I don't want it to kind of take away from the the sanctity of Formula One. That's not Formula One, but yeah, I think it's as I said, I'm sold on it as a concept for some races. I say 4, 5, 6 races a season. I think it'd be good, because I work Friday nights and it's tough to get in time for qualifying. So, yeah, not every race.
Yeah, that was something that also threw me off on Friday night. I've been like, oh, yeah, qualifying's on right now. But yeah, obviously we're just sort of sat around, on the potential of any, stewards' inquiries. But of the 2, I think, that we saw, well, there was at least 2 incidents, but 2 actual, well, at least 1 actual thing reported to the stewards that was going to be invested after the session. I just want to get people's takes on, as to whether it even is an incident that requires investigating. Obviously, the Russell signs, coming together at the end of Stowe, I think it was. No, that was Perez on Ricciardo.
I think it's Luffield, that corner.
Yeah, Luffield, that's what it was. Yeah. What do people take on it? Is this something that was worth investigating in the first place, or is it just FIA up to FIA again?
My concern with it is that there was absolutely no reason why they couldn't have decided that on the race, in the race, and the fact that they're doing it after the race tells me that they're looking at it and they're going to look to see what the finishing result was, which kind of lends towards a penalty, which I don't want to see, obviously. And I can see them giving George a 5-second penalty, because then that will promote Sainz back ahead of him again. I don't think it should be a penalty. I think when you look at the incident, I mean, I've only seen it the once in the race. I haven't had a chance to go back and look at it again, but my initial reaction to it is they're both... Firstly, it's a first lap incident, and they're supposed to take a more lenient view on it on the first lap. Secondly, George, yes, he's made contact with him, but he hasn't turned into him. Sainz has come across him, and it's not as if he was, he'd made an overtaking and then come back across him again, like Albon on Hamilton in Austria last year. They were both on the track. They both had room either side of them. He didn't push him out wide or anything like that. It was just a touching of wheels. So for me, it's a racing incident, and if that gets a 5-second penalty, then I think it's Michael Massey really needs to look at what he's doing, because I know he doesn't dish out the penalties, but he certainly gives guidance to the stewards, and I think that guidance is needs looking at if that is a penalty, because that's not what I want to see.
Yeah, if Steve Jackson was here, like he was supposed to be on today's show, you would have just opened up a whole can of worms bringing Michael Massey's name into this, because boy, has that man got some things to say about Michael Massey. But yeah, Jack, have you got any additional points on this?
I'm going to break the mold and say I agree with Tom. No, yeah, racing incident for me. But what does worry me is I'm pretty sure, I also race footage, you only saw it once. I'm pretty sure as George was up the inside, he was locked up, only slightly. It was like a minor under rotation, but that could also be deemed as sort of driving beyond
George
your car's
Russell
limit.
in control of his car.
Yeah, which it's rubbish, really. You are right. First lap, it should be taken. It should be accounted for that it's a first lap. They're going to fight harder. These things can happen. I wouldn't have called it as a penalty, but I do worry that it could be deemed as such.
Yeah, and also given that it's a sprint race as well, you are expecting them to be fighting harder than you would have expected them to be fighting anyway. So,
well, especially as F1's, that's what drummed it up as. Like, this is going to be a proper gloves off, like, street fight.
But not a race, because they don't want to, take away the whatever it is of. Oh,
that was really getting to me. That I know I'm for this concept now, but you're telling me, like, as I say, the most divisive thing in Formula One for years about whether sprint racing is good or bad, and all of those people from Sky absolutely 100% behind it. It's such a good idea. Yeah, as I said in our chat, there's definitely been some gift baskets given out there. There's been some been some free iPads and champagne, as I think you said, didn't you, Ruby? I think it's there's no way did they all agree with that. They were told they had to do it, or they just cast their talent based on who agreed with it and who didn't. So there's no way did everyone agree on that. So it's
funny you should mention that, actually, because having watched the Channel 4 coverage, they were much more measured. And lo and behold, our opinions have rather mirrored to our chosen broadcaster.
Shock horror, Sky are actually like on the side of Formula One, given that they sell their coverage to all the other countries. Shock horror. No, Channel 4 much more balanced and much more what's the word? Good.
Measured.
Yeah, I think better is the word.
Unbribed.
Yeah, not bribed. Channel 4 is definitely not bribed.
No.
Allegedly, before we get sued.
Yeah. So was there anything else that anyone has had any thoughts on regarding this Grand Prix weekend? Because otherwise we're just waiting on a tweet from Sky F1 that could never come.
No, I think I've said my piece.
Yeah.
Nothing more I can add.
Yeah,
apart from the fact maybe those reefs that they get. Little bit of trivia. Do you know the reason why they got rid of Laurel Reefs in the first place in Formula One?
Go on.
It's because they were covering up the sponsors on the overalls. And I noticed they brought them back, and they're so big you can still see all the sponsors.
That's one of the most F1 things that you could possibly say.
Yeah, but you look at the
reefs. They got
reefs
rid of it because it was hiding the money.
Yep.
But they brought it back, but made it so that you could still see the money.
Yep.
You're going to get custom designed overalls now with specific gaps to account for the reefs coming in.
Well, fortunately, the reefs are so big you could. It's basically a hula hoop with flowers on it. So.
I mean, the only teams that have really got to worry about it are obviously, Mercedes and Red Bull. Haas aren't going to get unless they're really confident for 2022. They're not going to get overalls with a space for a wreath.
This is true.
Although with the lack of sponsors, they already have a space for a wreath anyway, don't they?
I was going to say, we already see fake watches being embroidered onto the gloves. They'll just embroider it onto the driver's race suit.
Wow.
I think the only wreath they'll be getting anytime soon will be mourning the death of the team, to be honest.
I mean, aren't they already past that anyway at the minute?
Yeah, they're pretty much a zombie on the track.
Yeah, and on that note, just want to give another thanks to anyone that is still listening to the YouTube live stream. Thank you very much for sticking around with us. and we'll be back tomorrow again to review the British Grand Prix, which hopefully is as exciting as, the warm-up event that we've had today was. So, yeah, thank you very much.